And welcome into a special edition of Pressbox Live. I'm Stan the Fan. Along with me is Mary Drexler, the Program Director of Excellence in Program Problem Gambling for the University of Maryland School of Medicine. And with us today is Jim Nowlin, a peer uh, a peer support specialist. I screwed that up, Mary. But what is it? It's a peer recovery support specialist. All right.
Yes,
I
there you
just wrote
go.
that down in my scroll and I didn't have it down right. Jim, welcome. Appreciate it. Why
It's
don't
good
you
to be.
tell us a little bit before Mary and I chat and bring her into it? Tell us a little bit about your story, because I know you've had your own issues with gambling and you're on staff now, but you're an expert on recovery.
Well, I don't know about the expert part, but I know enough that I have a problem and I can't stop.
Yeah.
And knowing that, I think does put me heads over heels with a lot of people that are struggling with this disease. Basically, I've always been very competitive. I've always gambled growing up. It was just mainly for fun and talking trash. And then when I got a little bit older, started playing for a little bit of money and I enjoyed playing poker. Um, I had a job by living on my own
Yeah.
for what I felt was making good money. So who was I hurting realistically?
Right.
And as it turns out, the job I had was a police officer in Prince George's County. So I worked shift work. A friend of mine took me to Las Vegas, first time I was ever in a casino, and I was like a kid in a candy store.
You thought you were in heaven.
Oh, it was. I mean, all the glamour and the glitz, and they make no bones about it. If you want to win money,
Liberace was probably there.
absolutely. And if you want to make money, they have money. They don't have a problem telling you that.
Yeah.
And it's more fun to play against the house than taking your friend's money because your
Yeah.
friends might not be able to afford it.
Yep.
So I won a few dollars, not anything big, but I fell in love with it. So when we got back here to Maryland, Atlantic City wasn't too far up the road. So I started making trips up to Atlantic City. And in retrospect, I realize now that as you gamble, you win. It feels really good to win, and you get that nice rush. And unfortunately, over a period of time, what you might have been thrilled about winning didn't seem like enough anymore. So you had to raise your wager. So I had to raise my bets. So I started gambling for more and more money. Never thought I had a gambling problem. Never in a million years dreamt about it. And anybody that would have asked me, a young lady that I was dating once, I think she thought I had a problem. So needless to say, we broke up because that wasn't going to work out.
Right.
And down the road, I started dating another
That's like the dog food commercials now, where the person visiting says,
in
What's this food here for your dog?" And then they
right
get
in
kicked
in
out. Yeah.
in the refrigerator.
Yeah.
So they're gone. You're right,
Yeah.
absolutely right. So a couple years later, I started dating another young lady, and when she basically asked me and felt I had a problem, I had to decide to hide it from her because I wasn't ready to admit I had a problem.
Right.
On occasion, I would have a money issue. I'd be a little bit short on money, but for the most part, I was paying my bills and I was living the life. And as time went on, eventually we got married. Like I said, I was a police officer. She found me with a bit of money in my pocket one time and accused me of gambling. So I had to start keeping my money in my cruiser because I couldn't let her find this money because she thought I had a problem. So I got to the point where I was driving around in my cruiser with a lot of money. And I was thinking if I'm ever in an accident, somebody's going to think I'm ripping off drug dealers or doing something crazy.
Yeah.
But that's what I had to do because she thought I had a problem.
So did your problem obviously, and Mary, I'll bring you into this because you're going to understand it better than I do, but your problem wasn't necessarily you ran out of money or you were losing terrible amounts of money. It was lying and hiding things.
The basically my biggest problem at the time when I was gambling, especially in that intern part, is the dollar amount went up and up.
Yeah.
I always tell people my stomach was always in knots, and it wasn't from the gambling because I didn't think I had a problem. It was from the lying, the deception, and the manipulation I had to do to hide it because I
Wow.
was gone so much. And working shift work, there were times during the day where she might be at work. Eventually, I was on a department long enough, I got into a specialty unit. So I could be out all night on a situation, and it wasn't like she could call me.
Right.
So I could be in Atlantic City. So that manipulation and lying and deception is
You were
really
always,
what's tearing me up.
are
And
you still married to that woman?
I'm not sure how, but yes, I am.
Okay.
Yes,
How
I am.
unique, Mary, how unique is Jim's problem? Because that's a very different story than
Yeah.
usually it's the catastrophe of losses.
Well, Jim had some losses.
I'm not
Definitely had
saying he
some
didn't, but
losses
yeah,
near the end in his story, and had to face those kind of losses. But we hear that, we hear all different stories from people who contact us, you know. But I think in the end, it may start out where you think you have enough, but then you start wagering more, and you start wagering more, and then you realize you're not paying those bills. You're not doing what you should be doing in your life to survive. You're lying, like Jim said. All of those things come into play till you finally actually get to your bottom. And
yeah,
everybody's bottom seems to be different
yeah.
when they realize that they need to reach out for help.
Jim, let me ask you a question. How satisfying is it to be in a position now to help people that are going through the same, I won't say exact story, but the same footprints that you went through?
No, I understand exactly what you're talking about. And the best way I can put it is I loved being a police officer. I joined the police department because I wanted to be a different kind of police officer than some of the ones that I had run into in my youth. And I did that with passion. I earned the respect of my peers, my supervisors. I treated people with respect. Now, the gambling part, once my world fell apart and I had to figure out a way to get more money to hide it from my wife because I went and gambled everything away in our accounts, and
Mhm.
pretty soon she was going to find out. I decided I had to commit a crime to get the money, and that's what I did. And that cost me my job. I could have gone to prison for it. Fortunately, the judge um, recognized, realized, was compassionate enough that she basically told me that I had lost enough by losing this family that I loved. I'd been a
Yeah,
police officer for 20 years at that time.
yeah,
So I had to get another job. I went into sales and I did something. I put all of my compassion or my craziness into my work. I became a workaholic, and
yeah.
I did that for 30 years and I made a decent living. But after I think I retired for maybe 30 days, and I started doing something here and there. And then the opportunity came up to work at the Maryland Center of Excellence on problem gambling. And I'm now again doing something that I love doing. I mean, it's just amazing that I'm able to relate to people for what they're going through, because you mentioned not every story is the same, but for most of us gambling, whether it's slots or casinos or sports betting or whatever the game of choice is, it's the stories are intertwined. We gamble to the point where we feel like even if we do lose, we can win it back. And
Mhm.
if we do win, guess what? We can win more. So there's no off switch. And that's the cycle.
Mary, how first of all, I was just looking up something today about gambling, and it had something interesting, and it said that it asked the question, is gambling addiction a mental illness? Would you classify it as a mental illness?
It, it's gambling addiction is a disease. There may be a mental health component to it.
Right.
Gambling also doesn't occur in a vacuum, so there could be other disorders that are mixed with it, substance use disorder. Um, so, um, again, what happens is it the egg before the chicken or whatever, but is the gambling activity creating the depression, the anxiety? Was there anxiety, depression before they started the gambling? But there is a connection with mental health.
No question of that. Jim, do you feel that it
Yeah.
was that it caused was the affliction or the addiction the mental illness, or all the ancillary stuff it was causing was
I think it was all the ancillary stuff that
Ancillary.
was causing. For
Yeah.
me, um, I saw a lot of things on the job as a police officer that I wanted to tune out, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
I lost my brother, who's a year younger than myself, in 1983. And to this day, my wife firmly believes that's when my gambling really skyrocketed. For me, when I was at a casino, nothing else mattered. When I was at a casino, I could numb myself. I could tune the rest of the world out. I was raised very competitive. I played sports in high school, so I never really got into drugs or alcohol. We used to play poker on weekends with my buddies. So gambling was my outlet. And then when it took off, it just took a hold of me, and I could just not worry about anything else at the time that I was playing.
Yeah, and I think, Stan, important to note too that, legalization of gambling keeps progressing. So,
Yeah.
we don't have to go into the casinos anymore. We can do sports betting mobile and online. And in this legislative session, we are proposing again iGaming, which means casino games going online. So you'll be able to make bets
You can
online, don't
just
even
stay in
have
your
to leave
house
your
and not
couch.
have to have gas money to drive.
Yeah, and you're close to your bank account, which is on your phone. And so I think as the expansion keeps happening, we're I don't know if I want to say bringing it to the forefront, but there could be people who weren't even engaging in the activity just for recreation, or even if they were for recreation, the ability to do it anytime, anywhere, easily accessible is in my mind going to create more issues with people potentially getting addicted to the gambling activity.
Jim, the people that you're dealing with and helping on the road to recovery, how many of them, percentage wise, would you say have really gotten into it since the proliferation of legalized gambling? You know,
Yeah,
casino betting and all
Mhm.
that.
Sure. I right now the sports betting numbers are just starting to come in, because the reality of it is, when you get this disease and when you have this addiction, it takes a little while for you to blow your life up. So you can
Yeah, exactly. That's a
you
good
you
way to put it. Yeah.
you can start out by gambling, and then maybe you're spending a little too much time or effort or seclusion or whatever the situation is. But it takes a little while for you to lose enough to where you become 3 months behind in your car payment to get your car repossessed. That
Hmm.
you start justifying it's okay to take this money from my kid's college fund because I'm going to put it back. So it takes a while for you to reach
To
the
do damage.
damage that you've really blown your life up and you cry for help. And the sad part, Stan, is there's so many people out there that are struggling, and A, they don't even realize or recognize they have a problem. And B, the ones that know that their life is out of control don't know that there's free help and there's hope and there's a better way of life. So that's the issue that we're facing.
And that's part of what we try and do through the Center of Excellence on Problem Gambling is make people aware that there is hope and help. There is
Yeah.
there is 1-800-GAMBLER. There is a website. There is a way to get directly connected to a peer support specialist at the center. Somebody who's lived it can help you get through it. But we don't get the same kind of advertising dollars as the big sporting commercial entities have, or other entities. So we try and do the best we can doing things like this to educate people that there is that
Sure.
help.
Um, Curious, the notion of chasing your losses. Jim, how familiar are you with that?
It was a way of life for me. I mean, when you lose money, for me, and I'll speak for myself, when I lost money, I've always felt, and the truth of the fact of the matter is, if I'm being honest, I still think I'm a hell of a blackjack player. Okay. So when I lost money playing blackjack, I was mad and I wanted to win it back. And you know what? A lot of times I could win it back. A lot of times I won it back. I doubled it. I won more than I had.
Right.
The problem was I couldn't stop. It was never enough. And it got to the point where it wasn't about the money. People, if you were watching myself or people with this disease play, you think they're playing to try to get rich, buy a house for their mom or cars or whatever the case is. But it's about the action.
Yeah.
You get tied up to and hooked into that action that you can't give it up. So absolutely, if I lost, I'd have to go back and win it back. If I won, I might not be able to stay that night because of other obligations, but I'd go back.
Mary, how important a few months back we had Will on, who
Yeah.
was also a peer recovery specialist.
Specialist, yeah.
How important are the wills in the gyms? They might not
I
have your clinical knowledge, but they've got the knowledge inside their gut.
Yeah, I would say for the Center of Excellence on Problem Gambling, we would not be doing the great work we're doing if we did not have the peer recovery support specialist program. I mean, individuals in recovery, they're often our boots on the ground, the first connection to providers and organizations in the community, first connection to the people who are calling and seeking help. Um, you know, it's invaluable. And I recommend it, when I'm at national conferences, I'm like, states need to have peer recovery support specialists as part of their staff, not just a volunteer here and there, but they need to start incorporating and funding them as part of the staff.
And that is peer recovery support specialist.
Yeah,
right?
and all our peers are certified peer recovery support specialists. They're not clinicians, that's not their job. They are individuals who are able to communicate, establish a relationship, and provide these individuals with options for where they want to go, meeting them where they're at and supporting them through that process.
Yeah, it must be a tremendous amount of empathy that a Jim or a Will has
Yes.
and those folks. Leads me into the question, Mary. When somebody calls 1-800-GAMBLER, we give that number out all the time.
Yeah.
Do they get a Will or a Jim Nowlin on the line?
What they'll get is a helpline specialist who will ask, what may be going on in their lives right now, and they'll be provided the option to get directly transferred to a peer recovery specialist, someone with lived experience, or if they would prefer just a support group, or if they would prefer a clinician. But if they choose a peer recovery specialist, and that's one of the things our helpline specialists do is recommend the peers and the treatment providers who have experience with problem gambling, but they'll get a direct transfer right to the cell phone of our peer recovery support specialists. And we do answer those calls all the time.
We've never talked about this. If somebody is listening today that had a gambling issue, that feels that they are in recovery and they're interested in doing this, are you always looking for people?
Well, right now, we're hoping to hire a sixth person. We have 5 peer recovery support specialists, and potentially we're going to have an opening for a 7th. But that is something that's we are part of the University of Maryland School of Medicine, and that's always posted on the UMB website when we do have an opening.
Okay, that's really fascinating. It's interesting. We're in playoff football mode now, Jim. And I'm hearing these ads today, and the newest thing is, these big games deserve the players to be the bets to be supercharged.
Yeah,
That's a new term, to kind of boost your bet and so on and so forth. There's just no end to them always having a new angle
yeah,
on capturing you or
It's
trying to capture you.
absolutely, it's about building up the action.
Yeah.
I mean, back in the day, and I'm a little bit older, so back in the day when you bet on a football game, since it's football season, you'd bet on who won or who lost. and that
Right.
was it. And
Right.
you have to wait for the 3 hours to see if you won.
Yeah.
Now there's action from the beginning of the coin toss through every single play. You can bet on how many fumbles, how many interceptions, how many
Right.
whatever, and there's action. So
How long the national anthem?
absolutely, absolutely, you can bet on. So this way, if you're losing in the first quarter, you're losing money. You have a chance in the second quarter to make it up. If you're winning money in the first half, you have a chance in the second half to double it. So there's constant action.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
And
Hey,
with the mobile, you can do it from anywhere.
and
Yeah.
Jim, like you said earlier, the sports betting is exploding, right?
Absolutely.
As
Absolutely.
as a problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and what it is, everyone wants to see all the data on how big it's exploding, but I think Jim explained it well. It doesn't happen in 6 months. It builds. And so we're going to start even now after 2 years to begin to see the people who are saying, "Oh my God, look what I've
What
done.
have I done? Look what I've
And
done.
now I need help." And that's what I try and explain even when we do testimony at the legislature. It doesn't happen overnight, but you're going to see this happen over the next few years.
Jim, when you being the feet on the ground, so to speak, when somebody does reach the point where they reach out and they get to you or Will or any other the peer recovery support specialist, what is the overriding crisis most of the time? Is it I can't stop, or is it look what I've done?
I think it's a combination. A lot of people finally realize that their life is out of control. Their life is not anything like they whether it's their significant other, their own living experience. They can't make their bills. I talked to a gentleman who was living on a couch of a friend's, because he didn't have a home anymore.
Yeah.
So they get to a point where they realize their life is so totally out of control and they don't know what to do. And by talking to them and letting them know that I can relate, by letting them know that I've been there, this is what I did, I understand, and there is hope and there's help.
Well, one of the things I can tell is you've got the love of an amazing woman that stood behind you and beside you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I can't imagine what you went through. Mary, always entertaining to talk to you. I really appreciate it. Mary Drexler is the program director of the Excellence in Problem
Maryland Center of Excellence on Problem Gambling.
the Maryland Center for Excellence in Problem Gambling, part of the University School of Medicine.
Yeah.
And we've been blessed today by having Jim Nowlin, who's a peer recovery support specialist. I thank you both for coming on and talking about this. Always a problem out there, no question about it.
Oh, we thank you for getting the message out to help people.
Absolutely.
All right, talk soon.
All right.
Talk
Thank you very
soon.
much,
Take
sir.
care, Stan.